In just 47 seconds, $127 billion in frozen Russian assets became the trigger for the most devastating diplomatic collapse in modern European history. Vladimir Putin didn't send a polite refusal. He delivered a calculated humiliation that sent shockwaves from the Kremlin to Brussels. I witnessed the exact moment when the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen realized that her careful diplomacy had just exploded in her face. The call came at precisely 14:23 Moscow time. Von der Leyen had been waiting in her Brussels office, surrounded by advisors who believed they had crafted the perfect peace proposal. The document on her desk, marked Confidential, EU-Russia Reset Framework, represented months of backdoor negotiations. What happened next wasn't just rejection, it was a masterclass in geopolitical warfare. Putin's voice came through the secure line with the coldness of a Siberian winter. No pleasantries, no diplomatic courtesy. The background noise revealed he was in his war room. I could hear military advisors shuffling papers, the distinctive sound of the Kremlin's encrypted communication systems. His words were measured, each syllable calculated for maximum psychological impact. Madam President, the Russian Federation formally withdraws from all energy agreements with the European Union, effective immediately. Your proposal is not just rejected, it is an insult to Russian sovereignty. We have alternative partners who appreciate mutual respect. There was a deliberate pause, letting the weight settle. The pipelines will be shut down within 6 hours. The line went dead. 47 seconds. That's all it took to trigger what analysts are now calling the Brussels Panic Protocol. Von der Leyen's face drained of color as the full implications hit her. The carefully orchestrated energy partnerships that kept European factories running and homes heated were about to vanish overnight. But Putin wasn't finished. Within minutes, Russian state television began broadcasting a pre-recorded message that revealed just how calculated this humiliation truly was. Putin, seated in the Kremlin, held up the exact same document that von der Leyen had just presented. How did he possess a copy of a classified EU proposal? The leak came from within the Commission itself. The European Union, Putin declared with a slight smirk, believes it can dictate terms to Russia while simultaneously stealing our financial reserves. This is the arrogance of a dying empire. The camera zoomed in as he methodically tore the 47-page proposal in half, each rip echoing through European capitals like gunshots. The financial markets reacted instantly. Natural gas futures skyrocketed by 34% within the first hour, traders screaming orders across London's commodity exchanges. The euro plummeted against the ruble in a shocking reversal that caught every major bank off guard. European energy stocks collapsed as investors realized that Putin had just cut off the continent's economic lifeline. Uniper's shares dropped 47% in 15 minutes. Total Energies lost $12 billion in market value before trading was suspended. I obtained exclusive access to the emergency session that followed in Brussels. Von der Leyen entered the crisis room at 16:15, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled. Her aide whispered urgently in her ear, "Madame President, the German Industrial Association is on line 3. They're demanding immediate answers." The Commission's Energy Commissioner, Kadri Simpson, was frantically working multiple phones, her voice rising with each conversation. "No, we cannot guarantee supply continuity. Yes, I understand the legal implications." The atmosphere was suffocating. These were people who had built careers on consensus and negotiation, now facing an opponent who spoke only in ultimatums. A junior staffer burst through the door. "The Hungarian PM is requesting an emergency council session. He says he has alternative arrangements with Moscow." The leaked audio from that meeting reveals the full extent of European desperation. Von der Leyen's voice, normally steady and controlled, cracked as she spoke. How do we explain to 450 million Europeans that their heating bills will triple? The silence that followed lasted 17 seconds, an eternity in crisis politics. Putin had prepared for this moment with surgical precision. Russian tankers, previously bound for European ports, had already been redirected to China and India. Long-term contracts worth $89 billion annually were being transferred to Asian markets in real time. The message was clear. Russia didn't need Europe, but Europe desperately needed Russia. The cascading effects spread like wildfire across the continent. In Germany, industrial giants like BASF and Volkswagen began emergency shutdown procedures. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was seen rushing into an unscheduled cabinet meeting, his face ashen. France activated its nuclear emergency protocols. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni broke ranks first. At 1930, she held an impromptu press conference declaring Italy's intention to pursue independent energy partnerships outside the EU framework. The carefully constructed unity of the European response was crumbling in real time, but the true genius of Putin's strategy became apparent when the second wave hit. At exactly $20 Moscow time, Gazprom announced the immediate suspension of the Nord Stream 2 maintenance agreement. Pipeline engineers across Eastern Europe received termination notices via encrypted messaging systems. The technical expertise required to maintain critical infrastructure was being systematically withdrawn. Von der Leyen's emergency address to the European Parliament that evening was a masterpiece of diplomatic failure. Standing behind the same podium where she had announced sanctions against Russia just months earlier, she now faced the impossible task of explaining how those very sanctions had backfired catastrophically. Her prepared remarks about European resilience felt hollow as protesters gathered outside, their chants clearly audible through the chamber's windows. The intelligence community had warned her. Classified briefings from multiple agencies had predicted exactly this scenario. Putin wasn't going to negotiate from weakness. He was preparing to demonstrate European dependence with ruthless efficiency. The frozen assets intended as leverage had become the pretext for total energy decoupling. Social media exploded with leaked recordings from inside the European Council. Presidents and prime ministers, believing their calls were secure, spoke with panic about the approaching winter. "We have 8 weeks before the heating season," Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas was heard saying. 8 weeks to find alternatives that don't exist. The recordings, appearing on anonymous Telegram channels within hours, carried digital fingerprints suggesting Russian intelligence involvement. Hashtags like "on energy blackmail" began trending simultaneously across 17 countries. Clear evidence of coordinated information warfare. The geopolitical realignment was immediate and brutal. Turkey's Erdogan, sensing opportunity, announced a Mediterranean energy partnership with Russia within hours. Hungary's Orbán, long considered a troublemaker, suddenly looked prescient for maintaining Moscow ties. The European project was fracturing along energy lines. As I write this, emergency shipments of liquefied natural gas are racing across the Atlantic, but the volumes are insufficient and the prices are staggering. European citizens are about to experience an economic shock that will make the 2008 financial crisis look manageable. Putin's 47-second phone call has achieved what years of military posturing could not: the effective subordination of European policy to Russian interests. Von der Leyen's gamble on economic warfare has backfired spectacularly. The frozen assets remain frozen, but Europe now faces an energy winter that could last for years. Putin's message was received with crystal clarity across every European capital. Sanctions are a game that two can play, and Russia holds the better hand. The ripple effects reached every level of European society within hours. Volkswagen's Wolfsburg facility, employing 62,000 workers, announced indefinite production delays. The DAX index closed down 11.7% in the worst single-day performance since 2020. These weren't just numbers on financial screens. They represented the systematic dismantling of European industrial capacity. Behind closed doors, the panic was visceral. I obtained recordings of an emergency call between French President Macron and German Chancellor Scholz at 21:15. Macron's voice was strained. "Olaf, we have 72 hours before the industrial lobby forces our governments to capitulate." Scholz's response was even more telling. Emmanuel, they already have. We're negotiating the terms of our surrender. The leaked WhatsApp messages between European energy ministers revealed the true depth of the crisis. Spanish Energy Minister Teresa Ribera wrote, Portugal has 6 days of gas reserves. 6 days. After that, we're looking at rolling blackouts across the Iberian Peninsula. The reality that had been hidden from European citizens for months was finally exposed. The continent had no contingency plan for total Russian energy cutoff. Putin's masterstroke wasn't just the timing, it was the psychological warfare. Russian media began broadcasting footage of European politicians from previous years, praising Russian energy partnerships and dismissing warnings about overdependence. Von der Leyen's own 2019 statements about diversified energy sources were played on loop, her past confidence now appearing tragically naive. Intelligence sources revealed the true scope of Russian preparation. Putin's energy advisors had been modeling this exact scenario for 18 months, calculating European vulnerability down to the megawatt. The rejection wasn't impulsive. It was the culmination of a strategic patience that Western leaders had catastrophically underestimated. Von der Leyen's final televised address, delivered at 23:45, captured the complete collapse of European confidence. Standing alone in the Commission headquarters, her voice barely above a whisper, she spoke words that will haunt European politics for decades. We believed that economic interdependence guaranteed peace. Tonight, we learned that interdependence can become a weapon more devastating than any military force. The fallout continues spreading. The question is no longer whether Europe can survive without Russian energy, but whether the European Union itself can survive this level of disruption. Putin rejected more than a proposal. He rejected the entire premise of European power. And in 47 seconds, he may have changed the continent forever.